Yeah, thanks. So one, it's kind of a more intimate session. So I appreciate Hunter and Ryan for you being here and for kind of giving me a view of your background. Hunter, that's great that you're a freshman. I think that being early is better than being late, and it's never too early. Ryan, it's kind of interesting to see that you're in strategic planning. I looked on LinkedIn and saw you're at Jabil. I'm very familiar with Nipro and Jabil packaging solutions. So later on, I'm interested to kind of have a little bit more of a dialogue with you guys and see how I can be helpful. But I'm going to start off with pulling the presentation up. And again, thanks for sharing. I'm just going to introduce kind of how I've gotten to where I am today. And there has been a lot of career switching, as Liz alluded to, and networking has been, the vehicle that I've been able to do that primarily. I'm hoping you find these effective tools and kind of apply them to wherever you want to be. So just kind of what we're going to look at, there's four main parts: an introduction, which we're in now, why network and how to prepare, how to conduct the session, and then, maintaining relationships and what resources are available. We're primarily going to focus on the informational interview process. When you look at kind of further downstream outreaching with, potential employers in the interview, a lot of what we talk about with the informational is going to be directly applicable. So give you the tools and the building blocks, and then move on from there. So as Liz mentioned, I'm just going to run through my personal journey. You're going to see the start items. Those are opportunities that were primarily the result of networking, or they were accomplished by networking. But grew up in South Carolina, went to Stetson University. I graduated in 2011. While I was at Stetson, I joined the ROTC program. We had a phenomenal guest speaker, and it just kind of motivated me to join. I spent 5 years as a ranger, paratrooper, and infantry officer. During that time, I broke my ankle in 3 places and decided this is not the place for a career. Having that, I got married, and then I used graduate school as a way to pivot. And trying to get into graduate school was the first time I unknowingly used this technique to build advocates in order to kind of help me reach where I wanted to be. And I was reaching out to vets and just seeking advice and seeking information, which is a very basic strategy for networking and kind of the core pillar of the networking process that I'm going to talk about today. The last 2 years I've been an investment banker. Piper didn't recruit on campus. I knew I wanted to work at a bank. I knew I didn't want to work at a big bank, and I knew I didn't want to work in New York City. So I found a bank with an office in Charlotte. And then through personal contacts and Duke alumni, I was able to have a bunch of different conversations and ultimately ended up securing an internship and then a full-time role with Piper. While at Piper, great time to learn skills, but quickly realized it wasn't for me long term. Just wasn't exciting. Once I got out of it what I needed to, I said, all right, time to pivot. I reached out to local people in the area, and a person who was in commercial lending that I had spoken to about different opportunities, he actually kind of came back and said, hey, there's a family office, Silver Falcon Capital, that needs help figuring out how to invest in companies. So I worked with Silver Falcon for about a month, consulting on a project, kind of designing how they go out and find potential investments, how they evaluate those investments, and then how they would incorporate them into their platform. Ultimately got an offer to work with Silver Falcon, but kind of at the same time, I was looking at these entrepreneurial opportunities going to go buy a business. And one of the investors in this space is WSC and Company. I was just reaching out to them to figure out, hey, how do you do it? What's the process? And during the informational interview, they said, we're expanding. Why don't we talk about you coming to join our team? So I've just joined their team. I took the month of June off, and I'm here hitting the ground running in July. But I've joined a very small team, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to build a firm there. So that's a quick rundown of me, and as you can see, pretty much everything in the last 4 years has come about, as a result of networking. So very powerful tool, and I'm going to share some of the techniques that have enabled me to be successful in my journey. Was going to ask some questions, but I don't think it's really necessary here. So we're just going to go into why network and how to prepare. Kind of the 5 things we're going to cover is, Ryan, especially for you, it's an opportunity to explore career opportunities, acquire. I think to both of you, although, sorry, not Ryan, Hunter, I think it's great to kind of explore career opportunities. Acquire industry knowledge, understand how you're going to provide value, identify how to break in, and then acquire that job. Not that I don't think it's relevant for, someone who's a career or industry switcher. I think it's useful. Just coming from having that strong corporate background, I think you maybe have a better idea of what's out there and where the entry points are with different teams. But every organization is different, and certainly a large organization like a Jabil would be very different from a small firm or a small company where you kind of need to break some brush and find opportunities that aren't on the beaten path. But so exploring career opportunities. You don't know what you don't know, and in my experience with some of my clients, the best opportunities were small businesses. The CFO of the last client I worked with, she started out as a staff accountant, and over the course of 15 years, worked all throughout the organization, and now she's kind of the number 2 person in a couple $100 million business. So it's not big, but it's still pretty big when you think about what they're actually doing. Acquire industry knowledge. Hunter, saw that you wanted to look for how to find a job in the classical music business. That might be something very entrepreneurial after you go out and talk to people and you go start your own teaching business or learn from a large organization. I don't know what that would be, but that's why you'd reach out to these people, is to figure out what opportunities they are, and then the next step is understanding where you provide value. So everybody's going to be smart, everyone's going to work hard, everyone's going to be talented. It's talking to someone who's got experience and understanding where they really need somebody to come in and what specific value lever you can pull on. And that's going to feed into how do you break in. If it's Ryan, if it's a music teacher at a school, or sorry, I keep saying Ryan, Hunter, if it's a music teacher at a school, that may be a different route from saying, hey, I want to go and be a small business owner and be a private tutor. But these conversations are going to help you make that decision. And then finally, acquire a job. So most companies, is approximately 55%, fill job roles primarily through referrals or recruiters. So understanding what channel you need to be in and talking to employees, this is your best bet. This is the largest part of the funnel, and using this strategy, I think the easiest way to break in. So how do we prepare? There's 2 different things you need to do: self-preparation and then kind of your network target identification. Self-prep, it's making sure that you've got your you've got your resume redone, you've got your LinkedIn put together, and you've got your elevator pitch kind of pulled together tightly. It's thinking about what you have available to you. When I was applying to grad school, I went out and hired a consultant to help me put my application together. But as Liz mentioned before, Stetson has lifetime resources, and had I known that, I would have picked up the phone and called Liz and said, Liz, I want to go to grad school, help me out. And we would have pulled together a strategy for that. And then network target identification, trying to find employers, potential employers, and how to prioritize them. There's a technique I'm going to talk about called a lamp list, and that's going to be a relatively quick process that makes sure you are looking at the widest possible range and prioritizing them by how actionable and how much you want to work there. So self-prep, I just broke this down into three kind of things that you have to have. You have to have your pitch together, you've got to have your resume, and you've got to have your social media profile pulled together, and you need to do some basic research. But the pitch, it's 1 to 2 minutes about why you want to work in this role and why this company. When you get specific, you want to work with somebody because there's, we have our own personal blind spots. So having somebody like Liz or somebody else in the career services, or a trusted professional friend kind of help you out and make sure you're tackling all the relevant skills and you're not looking into any blind spots, and you're really narrowing in on why you provide value. The resume, it's just a gotta have. Again, career services is a great, careers and professional development. The office there is a great resource to lean back on. And then, your social media presence. Hunter, I haven't seen yours, but Ryan, yours looked great. Mine is not the best. There are a lot of resources out there, some of them on the career and professional development virtual tools page. Second to last bullet from the bottom will tell you how to get there, but it's a great resource to say, hey, this is the 5 things you need to do to make sure you're ready to go. And if you do all those things, you're going to have everything you need for when you email someone, when you set up a meeting, and when you're actually in the meeting. So I mentioned this list that you're going to build when you want to understand who you're trying to reach out to, and it's called a lamp list. It's from this book called The 2-Hour Job Search, and I first came across it when I was looking for my first job in grad school, and it's a framework to effectively and efficiently generate your list of targets, prioritize those targets, and then you can methodically work your way through it. But it shouldn't take more than an hour. Most of that's going to be on identifying potential employers. Then it's going to be, hey, do I know someone, or is there someone with a connection here who's going to be an advocate for me? Again, you're trying to get that person who's willing to refer you for an open role. You're going to think about, how bad do I want to work here? And then, are they hiring? Especially now, with COVID, I've got some colleagues that were, fantastic bankers, and then for better or worse, they left at a bad time, and they were thinking they were going to go get a corporate development job, and now they're just waiting on an international hiring freeze to be over. Even though they're super qualified and they want to hire them, no one's hiring right now, or a lot of large companies are hiring right now. So the first step of that, generating your list. The easiest way to do it is start with your dream employers, or employers that you know of, and think of as many as possible. And you're not trying to weed any out, just, hey, I might want to work there, put them on the list. And then for me, that was 5 or 10 max, and then I had to kind of go to the next step, which is, how do I build this out? And you systematically add peers or competitors. And you can do this using the internet to Yahoo Finance, Google Finance. I don't know if I think Stetson has it, if I'm remembering correctly, but there's a database called Capital IQ. If you're not a finance person, go to the library and get them to help you. But you enter these company names, and there's a little link you can press, and you can pull up all their competitors. And then so add those competitors to the list because they pretty much do the same thing from a product or service standpoint. So I said Disney, Universal, NASCAR, and then my 40th employer that I could think of was WeWork. So that was what I did here. And then we go on to the next step. So after an hour, now we're looking at this list and we say, do alumni or family work there? For me, I kind of expand it. So I do friends and family, my alumni networks, and then also military. So if there's anything that you've got that's unique or there's a passionate group, lump that in here. So Hunter, if it's someone says they're interested in music, and you could, I think you could add in like keywords or hobbies in LinkedIn or something in advanced search. If it's music, maybe reach out and say, hey, I'm a classical musician. I saw you were interested in music, and I was just interested in, how you did X. But that's a great way to think about if someone's going to be a potential advocate for you. Is do you have some kind of connection? So this is just a yes or a no. And then we move on to the next. Motivations. How bad do we want to work there? Disney's a great organization. Universal's great. NASCAR's great. WeWork, not so great. And so we've said 5's the best, 1's the lowest, and that's how we've done that. Postings. So postings is a proxy for how urgent do we need a job. If you're looking at a job or an internship 2 years away, you're thinking, hey, I might want to change it up in the next couple of years. You're not rushed. But if you're looking for a job now, you need to, find something that's really urgent. So the second most important criteria, first most being motivation. But yeah, how do you find job postings? Look on Hatter Jobs, look on Indeed. When I was thinking about transitioning, I used the LinkedIn jobs function, which was pretty good, as well as recruiters. But just be a little creative. And the best way to do this is to be as specific as possible. So I've put a technique here that you do in your Google search, company plus MBA or bachelor's plus classical musician plus teacher or whatever, and that's going to be how you get these postings to populate. And if there's a couple, give it a 4 or 5. If you don't see anything, give it a 1. So it's just, again, it's arbitrary. Just make sure you're being consistent. So the final sort, we're going to take everything we put into the table, and then you sort it first by motivation and then by your posting. So if you see, we've got Disney, NASCAR, Universal, although when we started out, NASCAR was the third thing we thought of, and the reason that is because NASCAR's back in business and they're hiring people, and let's just say Universal is still not opening yet. So that's why we would have seen that shift. So that's a quick rundown of self-prep as well as identifying potential targets. Are there any questions that you guys have that you want to run down on the content we just covered? If not, we can move on to the next phase where we talk about conducting the informational. Okay, great. So, and that's what we'll cover in the next piece. How do we get the conversation started? So where we are now is we've prepared ourselves and we've identified individuals or companies we want to reach out to. and now we need to actually reach out. There's a few different ways you could do it, LinkedIn, email, cold call, or snail mail. I would say if you can find their email is always the best way to go. LinkedIn, sometimes privacy settings can keep you from getting to their actual inbox. But anyway, so the whole networking, it's a mutual beneficial relationship. And Hunter, in your case, the benefit you're giving them is, hey, I'm helping somebody out who's a student and looking to kind of break. They're giving back to the industry. Ryan, I don't know, it could be, and I was talking to different investors when I was trying to change my job. It was about, hey, this is what I'm seeing in the industry. So I'm sure you're seeing a lot of interesting things in, industry 4.0 and whatever your part of Jabil you're in that they would find interesting, regardless of, whether they have a job or not. But that's just my thought. And again, we want to be as efficient as possible in this phase. So I've shared a draft email that I had from when I was looking to talk to people that had gone out and bought their own small business. The brackets are all the pieces of information that were semi-customizable based on what time of the year I was reaching out, where in the process I was, who I was reaching out to, and a few other specifics. But I just kept this draft email in my Outlook, and I just changed a few things, and I sent out 3 to 5 a week. And why I sent out 3 to 5 a week is because I was banking on those 3 to 5 to want to get back to me in the next week. So I have a full-time job. I can't go and get away from my desk for 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week without raising any suspicion. So you want to do what's in your control and in your bandwidth, but don't overextend yourself. And you're going to do this every week. So you're continually stacking up emails and informationals, and then further conversations. Eventually it gets pretty busy in your calendar. And that's just a good rule of thumb for how you build the pipeline. When you do have a response and you're setting it up, I like to send a calendar or placeholder, especially if it was through LinkedIn, because then I got their personal email. And when you have their personal email, you can then reach out to almost anybody else in their company. So Stetson's email format is first initial, last name at stetson.edu. So let's say I had Olivia's email and we had talked, but I want to reach out to Liz, and I know it's Elizabeth E. Connor at stetson.edu. I have sent her a cold email that hopefully she is going to respond to and maybe be impressed that I kind of figured it out on my own. I was running recruiting at Piper Jaffray. One of my analysts, somebody reached out to him from his alma mater, and our email convention was first name dot middle initial dot last name. And this guy, he went through his name was Wade Chips, and the person emailed Wade, it's wade.r.chips, and he emailed A through R until he got a hit. And on one hand, it can make you scratch your head and say that's kind of strange. On the other hand, you can say, wow, that's pretty impressive. They are pretty motivated. Yeah, virtual. I always do a phone call, but FaceTime's fine. I've done, I know some of you guys are in Florida, so coffee, I think it's fine. Whatever people are comfortable with. A walk. I've gone on walks in this COVID time frame. It's just a matter of figuring out what people are available for, especially if it's in your town. But if it's over distance, yeah, FaceTime or call, I think are the two best ways to go. And if it's in your hometown, kind of see what they're up for. yeah, my go-tos in town were coffee or phone call, coffee, and or grab a beer, which it's kind of a double-edged sword, but it worked for me. So anyway, so what if they don't respond? Um, I always say follow up in a week or 10 days. And if they don't follow up after that, move on. Again, we're trying to be efficient. And if they're not responding to a couple emails, then they may respond to you eventually, but they may not be helpful in the end. So cut our losses early and keep moving forward. So we've reached out, we've set up the meeting, we sent them the calendar in. Um, Now we're going to conduct the session. So, basic principles, informational interviews are going to be run by the candidate or the person who's asking for the meeting. Um, and then, you just want to show that you're interested. You want to show you've done some background work, and then, that you're grateful for their time. Do ask a lot of open-end questions about their own personal experiences. Do ask for homework. Do ask for references. Don't ask for a job. Don't talk a bunch, and don't run over or under time. I think anyone can appreciate everyone's got a busy life, and recognizing they've got a busy life too, and they're carving out 20 or 30 minutes. So we want to use all of that we can. In case some of your questions fall flat, have some extras, but don't go over. Or if you're getting close, you can say, hey, I don't know what you have going on, but I've got one or two questions. If you're fine going over, I'd really appreciate that. And I think that is received well. Yeah, it is. So a few questions coming up. One, Hunter, I see. Let's circle back on this because there's a lot of stuff that I like about your question, and definitely want to unpack. And then Liz, some of my go-tos, I'll use my experience in from the other side is when I was in banking and running recruiting. Some of the best go-to questions were always like, what deals are you working on? Or which is basically like, what kind of work do you do? And that tells you a few things. One, you can kind of get a sense of what people like. Some of the things that I saw, I was always excited by working with privately owned businesses, like family or founder-owned businesses, because I really liked the operators or entrepreneurs experience. On the flip side, the people that loved doing deals and loved banking, they liked working with private equity clients because those were going to be repeat clients, and it was going to be easier for them to make more money later on. Topics to stay away from, just be careful of any third rails. I heard I've heard people ask, this was 4 years ago, but they were asking about like the global financial crisis of like, you worked at a bank during the global financial crisis. Like, how do you reconcile that with like being a good person? I mean, that's just like a really bad question. I would just say always be positive. Always, keep it professional. You can go personal if it feels like the interview's headed that way. Like, what do you like to do in your free time? And that's a good small talk question to kind of go with and help you learn about them and learn about what they're about. And then the actual conversation, I use the Tiara framework. It's easy because when you're planning for the conversation, you've got these buckets to put your questions in, and then you can kind of start benefiting from economies of scale. But Small talk's easy, or it should be easy. It's just learn a little bit about them and show that you're not a robot. And then you can get into the Tiara method, which is trends, insights, advice, resources, and assignments. And these can be broken into two parts: things that are kind of generally about them and their opinions that you're going to kind of regurgitate in your thank you note. And then the next part, which is the resources and the assignments. This is going to be kind of still asking them, but it's like, hey, how do I get ready? Or how do I prepare? And it's going to be what you put in your email when you follow up in 2 to 4 weeks. So it's going to be the pretext for following up with them. But I think this is going to be posted later, so I'm not going to read each one to you. But if you Google Tiara framework networking, much more than this is going to pop up. But I would use this framework. It's going to keep you on the right track, and it's going to make sure that you get from small talk to asking for advice and for things to prepare yourself and for homework, which is what you want, and it allows you to follow up later on. So maintaining the relationship, again, I talked about how do you follow up. So the three things: thank yous, assignments and homework, and then regular updates. Thank yous, 24, 48 hours, get it out, regurgitate some of the stuff they said and say how much you liked it. I think that's just a norm. Yeah, so the 2 to 4 week gap, that is more, let's say, Hunter, you were talking to someone about teaching and they said, Hunter, this book or this article, and it's going to be dependent on what it is, but this was a great tool for me to think about being a music teacher or, running a small business and teaching instructions. It's a way for you to kind of give them some space because you're going to have followed up 2 days. So let's say you talk to them Wednesday, thank you note by Friday. Maybe you let them go a week, and then the week after that, you shoot them a note back saying, hey, I really appreciated you pointing me towards X resource. I spent last week going through it. I internalized a lot of it. This is what I learned. And then you can either ask for other things to do. Maybe you say, hey, do you know anyone in your network who would be happy to talk with me about X? Or it's more so. I would say 4 weeks is kind of long. That's a good sense, but depending on what it is, you want to make sure that you could have realistically processed it. And then the regular updates. I've got a list of people that I send a check-in to at least annually, sometimes semi-annually, and they've been employers or colleagues or classmates, and sometimes just kind of people I've hit it off with and want to stay in touch with. And some of the relationships there were instrumental in getting me from out of banking and into what I hope is my final career, but my next journey. And I don't know how I could have done it without having those relationships. So that's what we're nurturing and building here. And Hunter, hopefully by the, in 3 years, you've got, a handful of relationships that when it's time for you to find your full-time gig, they're able to really put you in touch with the right people, or they say, hey, I know this person for 3 years and they're a go-getter, and they're really passionate about music and teaching, and they'd be a phenomenal hire for this role, whether in their organization or an organization that they're familiar with. And then how to track. Stetson on their virtual resources page has a good template. I just pulled under number 1, you can see these. These are all Excel. This is like photographs from Excel. these are all the pieces of information that I track when I have a phone call or a coffee chat, or sometimes it was a meeting for work and I just wanted to make sure that I had their information. And so I've got a database of contacts, and then every month I go through and I sort it a certain way, and then I put in a formula, and then I see, okay, I haven't talked to this person in a long time, I need to follow up. And I'm actually, let's see, we're kind of like 45 minutes. So I was going to show you, but I think you can figure it out. Or if you just have the data table, you can kind of look at it, but it's just how to do something in Excel. So let's go back to Hunter's question. So first part there, Hunter, I think if you worked in administration, I think you want to put things that are relevant in there. So to the extent it's relevant for internships, maybe you've got office skills that would be useful. LinkedIn's a good platform to reach out. Again, I think email is the best platform, but LinkedIn's a close second. The only reason I say it's not as good is I found that sometimes if you send a message to someone and you don't have the right connection, or you're not in a shared group, your message can go unread. And then the internships that don't pertain, I mean, as a last resort, yeah, I could show, should I go for internships that don't pertain to my career? I would say as a last resort, try and get as like close as to the direction you want to go as possible. And then having a resume longer than a page is frowned upon, but I think you can keep your resume tight. Go talk to career and professional development office. They'll help you. They'll help you get it together and make sure that it's one page. I think you should be able to get it there, and they're honestly the experts. They do this every day to get in the right format and the right length. Just some quick resources. Stetson, the Stetson resources, career service, career and professional development. You've got everyone here. And then the alumni office, you've got Olivia, who's on the chat. And then the outside resources, I mentioned the 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton. It's a great book. It's got a lot of frameworks. It's got some LinkedIn hacks. And then bank development. This was a career services person that I worked with at Duke, and she's starting a podcast, and she's just got some free content on our website that I think is very helpful, in addition to the Stetson content, as well as the free Stetson services that are offered. So, and then you've got Liz's LinkedIn. So go ahead and if you're in the chat, click on her LinkedIn and send her a connect, and she'll make sure that you get to the right point. So that's kind of it, and and Olivia's LinkedIn as well. So if we've got any questions, feel free to fire away in the chat. Liz or Olivia, I don't know what the best message is with sharing video or anything like that. Now that we're kind of through, but I'll defer.
Great. Yeah. So while Olivia's popping on there, thank you so much. This content is really, really awesome, because I think you make it easy, right? Which is really just connecting with people on a base level, right? Networking is all about building connections and relationships. And so thanks for all the information you were sharing and for answering all the questions in the chat. There's a lot of good questions. So with that, Olivia, do you want to maybe pull up the last couple of slides?
Yes. So folks, I've also made everybody moderators. So you guys can go ahead and just raise your hand before you chat, so we're not all like talking over each other. But if you have any extra questions, you can go ahead and ask away. And Walker, thank you so much. One of my favorite things was this tiara framework. I had never heard about it before, and so I'm learning something new every day. I wish I would have known that back in undergrad, but it's never too late.
Yeah, quick question. Now that everyone's a moderator, could they, if they want to, download the presentation or any of the other slides that are on here?
Let me look. I don't believe so, but I will be sending out an email to everybody who registered. So even if they weren't able to attend for whatever reason, they will be getting the email with the recording and the PowerPoint, so they'll be able to see all the resources. Yeah, and the books and stuff, I'm like excited to check out those and whatnot. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and while Hunter and Ryan are maybe, getting their questions together, something else that I think was really key that I think a lot of people don't think about, which I think you made a really good point on, and I think it's because you have your financial background or your business, your corporate background, is like you said, I think you have to almost put in a strategy that plays a little bit to the numbers, right? So don't just ping or connect with 2 people on LinkedIn, right? Connect with like 3 a day or 3 a week or 5 a week or whatever your number is, right? And if you follow up and you don't get a response, let's move on, right? Because there's more people out there. And like Olivia said, there's a lot of Stetson alum. There's also maybe other connections that they have. So I love that you said, like, spend your time, try to nurture that relationship. But if it's not working out or if it's not going as planned, move on, right? There's more people out there to connect with. So don't get stuck. And that's what I find a lot of times is people get stuck if the first person doesn't reach back out or if it doesn't go like they expected. So I love that part, is keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, Ryan or Hunter, I don't know if you have any more questions or you want to talk to Walker here. We can turn on your cam. All you have to do is drop us a question or a little hand icon. There we go. Okay, cool. So if Olivia, I don't know if he's able to turn on his or if you need to turn it on for him.
Yes, you should be able to turn yours on now, Hunter.
Oh,
so
hi.
there is a there we go.
Hi. So I just had a question for Walker. So I'm planning on going to grad school. I just don't know if I should be taking time between undergrad and grad school to gain more experience. I was just wondering what you did or what your take on that was.
Yeah, I think internships, they're going to provide context, if it's what you want to do, or an opportunity to build a skill. So when I was at Stetson, I didn't do anything my freshman year, sophomore year. I mean, I did like a wilderness thing. It was kind of like leadership focused, but no, my sophomore year, I applied for a grant and I went and worked as a journalist out in Jackson, Wyoming. Realized that journalism what I wanted to do, and then kind of found my way into the Army and did Army stuff for the rest of the summers. But you know, summer's a valuable time to learn a lot about your profession, and also make some money. When we were running recruiting, I was most impressed by the guys or girls that went and did just like a hard job, maybe after their freshman year or sophomore year. Because to me, somebody was like laying bricks in Alabama, and they, if you do that for a summer, I think a lot about hard work, because it's not an easy job, it's not a pleasant job, and it gives you something to talk about, versus I went and hung out all summer. You don't have to do that if you want to go get an office internship. Do that. I think you can learn the same lessons. But I would definitely do that, and definitely talk to Liz, because she's the one that gets you ready for grad school.
Yeah, and I would say one thing to add on to that, great advice. Like he said, do something that either builds your skill, gives you new knowledge, or just pushes, the boundaries a little bit, right? I think those people that stay in their comfort zone, or as much as I like to relax during the summer, right? You don't want to do that all summer long, right? Not only because you're going to run out of Netflix shows eventually or games to play, but also because you really want to, always try to keep leveling up, right? Try to leverage those skills. Something that I really like to tell students or even alumni is a lot of folks think that most students go straight from undergrad to grad school. And if you don't do that, you're kind of either against the norm or you're like not a failure, but you're just not doing it in the right way. And I'm like, who said, right? If you look at the data, most of the folks going to grad school actually have either a gap year or some time in between that they've taken to better themselves in some way. So I love that advice. Internships, travel, volunteering, service, leadership, maybe taking some other courses. I know this time during COVID, if anybody's interested, we have a lot of free trainings and resources that we found with different companies such as like Gartner, AT&T, Canva, different design software, Java, Microsoft, all of that. So it's a great way to, don't just do nothing because you don't want to do that, but don't be afraid or don't put too much pressure on yourself to have it figured all out by that May graduation date or that December graduation date.
Looks like both of you guys have your hands up, so Ryan, we'll let you go ahead and ask a question first. And you can unmute yourself down at the bottom of the screen. There's a little microphone. If you just press on it, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay.
All
Go
right.
for it.
Yeah, while you type it in, that's no worries. Hunter, if you had another question while Ryan's typing his, you can go ahead and ask it.
I just wanted to say that I thought it was really interesting what you said about the taking a gap year in between undergrad and grad. I was particularly worried about that because I was worried that I wouldn't possess the same knowledge that I had in undergrad when I go into grad, or how the application process would work. But I'm sure I'll learn that through my experience at Stetson. I just thought it was really interesting. Like the whole presentation was really interesting in and of itself. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say too, reach out to Walker, learn more about his journey, his personal story, do the same with other alumni, and definitely talk to me and Olivia. That's why we're here. And then I think too, things change, things happen. Like I have a student who applied to grad school. He's actually a recent grad, just graduated in May. He wants to do physical therapy, and he actually got waitlisted for his schools. He actually didn't get into any of his schools. And as much as that was hard to hear for him, he literally was like, you know what? I'm not going to give up. This is my dream. I'm going to take this next year or 6 months or 8 months, whatever that cycle is, when I can next apply, and I'm going to better myself. So what I told him is I was like, okay, let's look at your resume. Let's look at this. Let's look at your application materials. Why don't you reach out to the admissions recruiter? Like, let's put together this plan. So I think you starting early, both of you, is key. And then just not being afraid to put yourself out there. And like Walker said, he had someone that he leaned on to or offered him support during his graduate school search. So definitely do that as well. I think that's key, to talk to the schools or the folks that are going to help you get in. So yeah, we can definitely talk more about that.
Mhm. Ryan, great question about kind of a ballooning list. I mean, there are two sides of the coin. One, it's great to have as big a list as possible, but you're right, it gets unmanageable. I would say just kind of look at it from a utility standpoint. There's probably a slice that's really high value, and there's probably the biggest portion, which is kind of in the middle. And then there's maybe a portion at the bottom that you know, it sounds terrible, but may not be as useful. So you could drop that bottom slice off, do a kind of that framework-esque message to the middle slice, and then you have the high value slice at the top that you're doing more custom messaging to, or spending more time kind of managing that network. But I had a boss who, he'd been in the industry for 30 years, and just amazing to see the different conversations he could have with, clients or counterparties based on, who they knew in the industry. And it was just kind of neat to watch those conversations unfold, and realize that they're talking about things that happened, 20 or 30 years ago, but they've still got, a similar shared experience. So I hope that's helpful to some degree, but yeah, I mean, you could just slice it up and tackle it that way. I'm not there yet, but that's kind of the way that I would think about it.
Yeah, and I would say too with the contact list that you're creating or this list of people, Ryan, is to maybe, like he was saying, think about who are your targets, but then maybe that you're not this is a double negative, but not never going to reach out to those individuals, but maybe you're not going to prioritize them right now, and maybe you put them that on that revolving list. I think it's also really key, like he said, to spend your time wisely. So customize where you can or where you really need to, and then also have those other messages that you can kind of, send out. And I would say too, just also getting something that I really liked, that Walker said, and I just sent to another student via LinkedIn here just a second ago, was focus on the questions, the type of questions you ask, because I think that's really going to lead the conversation and keep the energy up, the positivity up, keep the person engaged that you're talking to. But also ask them, hey, I want to make the most of my time, or I want to, really, really level up or attack this or leverage or whatever wording you want to use, is ask them, who else should I be reaching out to? Or hey, if you trust them, or if they trust you, or if there's someone where you feel like you can ask them. I've even had mentors or people that I've gotten to know, alumni from my university, where I shared part of my list and I said, hey, I have this list, who would you next reach out to, or who should I spend time on, or get them to also be kind of like one of your board of directors or your support people, right? So I think it's also okay, to the select few to even help pare down your list or get their opinion. So great question.